The night my triplets decided to play a joke on me, I was standing alone in the kitchen, staring at 3 empty cereal bowls and wondering how my life had shrunk to the size of a sink full of dishes in a heart full of silence. Grief has a way of becoming ordinary, like background noise you stop noticing until the power goes out. For me, the power had gone out 3 years earlier when my wife died, and everything since had been dim, functional, and painfully quiet. I did not know that a single laugh, planted as a prank, would open a door I had nailed shut with fear and loyalty and love that had nowhere to go. Before this story pulls you any deeper, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that show up when we least expect them, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment below, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us where you are watching from, because stories like this belong to all of us, wherever we are. My name is Daniel Carter, and I am a single father to triplets named Ethan, Noah, and Lily. They are 12 years old, sharp as broken glass, and brave in the careless way only children who have known loss can be. Their mother, Emily, was the steady center of our family, the one who remembered birthdays and matched socks and believed that joy was a daily discipline. When cancer took her, it did not ask permission or offer closure. It just arrived, rearranged our lives, and left. I stayed because staying was the only way to keep breathing. I learned how to braid Lily's hair and pack lunches that did not taste like sadness. I learned how to smile at school events while my chest tightened like a fist. What I never learned was how to imagine another future that did not feel like a betrayal. The triplets, however, had imaginations that refused to accept my emotional lockdown. They watched me move through the days with efficiency and a kind of respectful sorrow, and they decided I needed help. Their plan arrived disguised as a joke, which was how they always delivered the things that mattered most. They signed me up for a local charity dinner, telling me it was a volunteer requirement for their school, something about community service hours. They did not mention that the seating chart had been carefully engineered, or that the woman assigned to my table was someone they had already decided might change me. The restaurant was small and warm, the kind of place that tried hard to be cozy and succeeded. The lights were low, the air smelled like bread and butter, and I felt out of place in my borrowed blazer and carefully ironed shirt. I was already rehearsing polite exits in my head when I saw her. Her name was Grace Whitman, and she sat with her hands folded, eyes calm, carrying herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived something and learned to stand again. She was a widow, though I did not know that yet. What I noticed first was the way her smile did not rush to meet the world, as if it had learned patience from grief. The date itself, if it could be called that, unfolded without fireworks or dramatic turns. It was gentle, almost awkward, like two people speaking a language they had not used in years. We talked about the charity, about the weather, about the small town that held all our shared memories even if we had never met. There was an ease to her presence that surprised me, a lack of pressure that made breathing feel simpler. I did not laugh much, but I listened, and for the first time in a long while, listening did not feel like work. When I returned home that night, the triplets were waiting, pretending to be asleep while failing spectacularly. Their faces were hopeful in the dark, and I realized that their joke was not cruel or careless. It was an act of love, clumsy and brave. I told them it had been fine, and they grinned like they had won something. In a way, they had. Grace and I began to cross paths in small, unplanned ways. At the grocery store, where she stood comparing apples like the decision mattered deeply. At the park, where she walked slowly, as if each step was a promise she intended to keep. We did not rush anything. There were no dramatic declarations or sudden changes. What happened instead was subtler and far more powerful. She noticed the way I flinched at certain songs, and she did not ask why. She noticed how I talked about my children like they were my oxygen, and she respected that without competition. I learned that Grace had lost her husband in an accident that split her life into before and after. She had learned how to live in the after with patience and a kind of quiet courage. She volunteered at the same charity not because it distracted her from pain, but because it reminded her that pain could coexist with purpose. Being around her did not erase my grief, but it made space for it, the way a room feels bigger when the windows are open. The triplets noticed the changes before I did. They noticed that I hummed while cooking, that I stayed a little longer at the park, that my laughter, when it came, sounded less like an obligation and more like a memory finding its way home. Lily once slipped her hand into mine and asked nothing, and I understood that she was checking if I was still there. I squeezed back, grateful for the way children know how to forgive adults for being human. There were challenges, of course. Grief does not disappear just because something new arrives. There were nights when guilt wrapped itself around my chest and whispered that loving again meant forgetting. There were moments when fear tried to convince me that happiness was temporary and therefore dangerous. Grace never pushed. She understood that healing is not a straight line and that love does not demand erasure. She showed me, without saying it, that loving her did not require me to love Emily less. It required me to love life more. One afternoon, a storm rolled in without warning, the sky turning the color of old bruises. The power went out, and the house filled with shadows. The triplets gathered close, instinctively seeking warmth and reassurance. Grace arrived with candles and soup, as if she had sensed the darkness and decided to challenge it. We sat together, the four of us and her, sharing quiet stories and simple food, the storm raging outside while something gentle and resilient took root inside. In that moment, I saw a future that did not erase the past but honored it by continuing. Time passed, measured not in grand milestones but in accumulated trust. Grace became a presence in our lives, steady and kind. She attended school events, not as a replacement, but as a supporter. She listened to stories about Emily with respect, never shrinking from the truth of our history. The children, wise beyond their years, accepted her not because they needed a new mother, but because they recognized a good heart when they saw one. The joke date became a family legend, retold with laughter and a kind of awe. It reminded us that sometimes the bravest acts come disguised as foolishness, and that love often arrives when we stop guarding the door. I learned that being a single dad did not mean being alone forever, and that opening my heart did not make me weak. It made me alive. As this story draws close to its ending, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this journey moved you, if it reminded you that healing is possible and that love can grow in the cracks left by loss, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach the people who are quietly waiting for them. Please comment below and tell us what part of this story stayed with you the most, or share your own experience with second chances and unexpected love. In the end, what changed everything was not a grand gesture or a perfect romance. It was the simple, courageous decision to show up, to risk connection, and to believe that life still had something to offer beyond survival. My triplets taught me that love is not a finite resource, and Grace showed me that grief and joy can walk hand in hand. The house still has quiet moments, and some nights the memories still ache, but there is laughter now, and light, and a future that feels possible. And that, I have learned, is more than enough.